The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Students for Liberty's e-Leadership Series. My name is Blaine Bennett and I am the Communication Manager of SFL. We are honored to have Dr. Edward Hudgins deliver a talk tonight on true egoism. Before we begin though, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Students for Liberty and the e-Leadership Program. Students for Liberty is a 501c3 nonprofit organization run by students and for students dedicated to liberty. We were formed 2 years ago to serve a previously unfilled niche in our universities, connecting liberty-friendly students with other students, faculty, organizations, and resources to help them advance their ideas and applications of classical liberalism. The resources we offer include free books for student groups, a speakers network, protest grants, handbooks on running a student organization, tabling kits, leadership training, an academic journal for liberty and society, and our bread and butter conferences. SFL is hosting 9 regional conferences this fall, and 8 of them are coming up in the next few weeks in New York, Northern and Southern California, Austin, Chicago, Phoenix, and Atlanta. These are really incredible one-day events that will bring the country's top classical liberal scholars, activists, and leaders together with students impassioned by the ideas of liberty. You won't want to miss this opportunity. Register quickly if you haven't yet at politicalconferences.org. The e-Leadership Program is our way of giving you access to the ideas and mentorship in liberty year-round from wherever you are. We hold 4 webinars per month, 2 on the ideas behind liberty and 2 on mentorship and effective techniques in advocating liberty. All lectures take place Monday nights at 8 p.m. from your computer. For a full list, please visit our website, studentsforliberty.org. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker this evening. Dr. Edward Hudgins is the Director of Advocacy and a Senior Scholar at the Atlas Society in Washington, D.C. He has served as Director of Regulatory Studies at the Cato Institute, Editor of Regulation Magazine, Senior Economist for the Joint Economic Committee of the U.S. Congress, and Director of the Center for International Economic Growth at the Heritage Foundation. He is widely published and has testified on many occasions before Congress. Just to note, there will be about 15 minutes of Q&A at the end of this webinar. Feel free to type in any questions in the question box. And for those who are interested, this webinar will be recorded and archived on our website in the next few weeks. Without further ado, I present to you Dr. Hudgins.
Good evening. I hope all of you are doing well, and happy Columbus Day. I have a piece on Columbus that's on various websites if you're interested. And I'll say a few words quickly about the Atlas Society. For those of you who don't know, we also are a 501c3 organization. We promote the philosophy of objectivism, specifically open objectivism. Now, we think that that adjective really doesn't change the philosophy. We think it's implicit in the philosophy, but one of the things that we differ from other organizations. First of all, we believe in open discussion with others. We do not assume that if people disagree with us on philosophy, they're necessarily morally evil or whatever. We believe that the way you change people's minds are you talk to them. And second, we believe that objectivism, like all philosophies, is an open philosophy. Now, that doesn't mean that the philosophy doesn't have certain tenets that define it and separate it, differentiate it from other philosophies, but it means that we do not claim that we know everything and that we're omniscient. There are going to be discoveries in the future that we may need to amend the philosophy or whatever, and we are open to that as well. So we, unlike, say, some other organizations, do not have loyalty tests in order to deal with us. We want to deal with honest people who are seeking the truth. So, having done the little advertisement, I want to get straight to the talk for this evening. True egoism, what it is and why it's necessary for freedom. Now, it's interesting that the political principle of a free society maintains that each individual has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, including property, by the way, with government established simply to protect those rights. It's right there in the Declaration of Independence. And yet, if you look at the moral language that people usually use, when you talk about the pursuit of happiness, this is sometimes portrayed as selfish or egotistic or wrong or bad or evil, some kind of negative emotive word is usually attached to doing exactly what the American regime was set up to do, give people the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. The implication is that the morally right thing is self-sacrifice, is working for others, that's the standard by which we should judge our actions, and that's the standard by which others should judge us as whether we're moral or immoral. Now, Ayn Rand provocatively declared that selfishness is a virtue. Now, some would suggest that that might be a bad choice of words, and I believe that Rand was trying to be very provocative because at that time, especially in the late 50s and early 60s, anything that was self-interested was usually declared to be evil. I think maybe the word is not the best to use today, but what I think we do need to do is take a look at the essence of the philosophy, what objectivism tells us about values and morality. And I'm going to maintain in this talk that we all should be true egoists. Now, in this talk, I'm going to do, three things. Okay, there's my, so I should have gone to the next slide. In this talk, I'm going to do three things. First of all, I'm going to discuss the essence of ethics. Second, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about the life of true egoism. And then the third thing I'm going to do is talk about the egoist foundations of freedom. So, three big things that I'm going to do in this talk. So, let's go ahead and move on to big thing number one, the essence of ethics. Now, for those of you who attended the Students for Liberty event in Philadelphia, some of the material in this first part might sound familiar to you if you've heard my talk, but it's always useful to review. Usually when we have discussions about ethics and values and things of this sort, the first question is, well, what's the code of values? What should we do? Is it good to love thy neighbor as thyself? Is it good to give to charities? Is it good to be a hard worker? Is it good to be honest? Is it good to love your parents and your family and so forth? So the discussion is always about the what should we do? Ayn Rand had a unique approach to the question of values and ethics. She said that shouldn't be the first question. The first question should be, why do we need a code of values to begin with? She did it this way because many philosophers, especially in the 19th and 20th century, maintained that ultimately all values are subjective, meaning I happen to think that you should be nice to your parents, and someone else says, well, maybe not. Someone else thinks you should be selfish. Someone else thinks you should serve society. Ultimately, it's all subjective, right? And Rand said, well, the way we can discover the objective basis for morality is to ask, why do we need a code of ethics to begin with? She gives the example of an indestructible robot. She says that, think of an indestructible robot. An indestructible robot does not have values. It doesn't need values. Number one, it doesn't have any choice, right? It's pre-programmed. It does what the program says, and that's it. It can't make any decisions one way or the other. Second, it's indestructible. Nothing matters. Dropping a bomb on it doesn't matter. It's indestructible. So what she does is she says, okay, what facts can give us an objective basis for values? And she says the question you would have to ask is, values to what end? And she says, ultimately, when you're talking about values, the phenomenon of valuing is only possible for a living creature. The ultimate alternative is life or death. Matter and energy can change forms, but continue in existence. For example, a piece of paper or a piece of wood can burn and it becomes ash, and a certain amount of energy is released. Hydrogen atoms at the center of a star can be crushed together and becomes helium, and a certain amount of energy is released. But life can go out of existence, life comes into existence. The concept of value and the phenomenon of valuing only makes sense when you're talking about living creatures. That's what values refer to. Values are in the realm of the living. Values to whom? Well, for the purpose of our discussion, of course, we're talking about values concerning human beings. And this is very important. The entity that we're talking about is not humanity. Human life is the standard of all values, but the living entity is the individual. The living entity is the human individual. This is very, very important. This is absolutely central to any code of values, any discussion of ethics. An individual is conscious or unconscious, is nourished or starved, is healthy or sick, is happy or sad, is alive or dead. Again, while the standard is life and human life, only the individual is the living entity. So any discussion has to focus on the individual. Further, when we're talking about values and human values, we're not talking merely about survival in the sort of sheer sense. We're talking about something even wider. Humans are incredible creatures. We have incredibly subtle capacities for joy, for spiritual satisfaction and ecstasy. So when we speak of survival, we speak of survival as human qua human, or as Ayn Rand would say, man qua man. In other words, the goal of life is not just to keep yourself alive. It's to be happy. It is to flourish. That is the goal of life. And this is the way Rand put all of this together. Now, having said that, having established that the standard of all values is life and human life, and specifically the life of the individual, Rand said and asked the question, what are the values and the virtues now that we can try to apply to ourselves? What is the unique human way of going about surviving? And what should we do? How should we act? What about that code of values we asked about earlier? Well, okay. First of all, human beings are different from other forms of animals, certainly on this planet. Some creatures live by sensations, others live through perceptions. You know, some sort of an animal has to look at its prey, it's got to smell the plants to tell which ones it can eat, which ones it can't eat, that sort of thing. Human beings have a unique capacity that is our tool of survival, and that is our rational capacity. And this leads us to our first virtue. That is what we should be fostering in ourselves, and the capacity that we should live by, and that is rationality. The practice of using our mind to understand the world around us and to understand ourselves. That is the first virtue in the objectivist ethics. It's to ask questions like we're asking right now in this seminar. And by the way, to be rational is the first moral act. You think of rationality as using your rational capacity so you can understand the world and so forth, but it's more than that. It's the first moral act. The origins of evil are basically found in the refusal to think, the refusal to face reality. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, by the way, as I'll say also later, while we have the capacity for reason, we have to choose to exercise it. That's going to be a very important point in just a minute. I'll also note that when we talk about rationality, we're talking about our conceptual capacity. It's something very unique with human beings. We can actually build up the integrated understanding of the world around us through concepts. And Rand has a whole theory of how to do that, and call your attention to the Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. Brings us to the second virtue that you should foster in yourself, and that is productiveness. Now, again, unlike other animals, we have to create the physical means of our survival, to say nothing of the spiritual means of our well-being. We have to figure out how to hunt, how to plant food, build shelters, discover medicines that will cure our illnesses, that sort of thing. And productiveness means that in ourselves, we have to have self-discipline. We have to have focus. We have to be able to set specific goals and have the fortitude to pursue those goals. And again, animals act on instincts. Human beings have instincts perhaps, but ultimately we have to make choices and produce the means of our survival. The third virtue is pride, or self-esteem as it's sometimes translated. Now, this is very interesting because in a lot of moral codes, pride is considered a deadly sin. In objectivism, pride is considered to be a virtue. Now, what is pride? Again, let's be clear about it. Pride means, first of all, accepting that you are worthy of life. You as an individual are worthy of life and worthy of happiness. You have to start on that premise, that you as an individual, as a living conscious entity, are worthy of life. And second, that you are capable of meeting the challenges of life. Again, you might say, well, I don't have enough education. Well, you go to school. I don't have certain skills. Well, you can acquire those skills. That's the things that human beings do. So pride, self-esteem, perhaps is a better word to use here, is considered one of the most important virtues. Otherwise, everything else falls apart. If you don't consider that you're worthy, if you consider you're a piece of garbage, well, why do you need to be rational? Why do you need to be productive? Why don't you just pitter your life away? Okay, this leads to a number of other virtues, and I'll kind of go down these quickly so I can get to some more points. Honesty. Honesty is the virtue of never faking reality in your own mind. It might be comfortable for you to think, it's coming to the end of the semester. I really haven't studied very much, but something. I'm sure I'll be able to work something out. That's evasion. Okay, chances, unless it's a real simple course or whatever. You're evading reality, you're faking reality, you're pretending like you can get away with something that in the end you probably aren't going to be able to. Honesty is the virtue of never faking reality in your own mind. Independence is another very important virtue. Independence means that you must use your own mind to judge the nature of reality and what is in your self-interest. Others can advise you. You can ask people for their opinions on things, but ultimately, judgment is your responsibility. You can't abrogate judgment to other people. Even if you go to a doctor, and the doctor's the expert, you're not a doctor, right? Even there, you have to make judgments about the doctor's opinions. Doctors can be wrong, believe me, I know. Okay. Luckily, we have the internet now, so you can go and you can look up and you can look for alternative opinions and all. But ultimately, even on something like that, where you need an expert, you're going to have to judge yourself. Independence is also a primary virtue. By the way, all the stuff that I'm telling you right now, you should be independent enough to judge for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. You got to judge for yourself whether I'm correct or whether I'm crazy. And hopefully you'll be asking questions at the end to show that you're exercising your independence. Now, by the way, I want to mention that sometimes there's a tension among some objectivists concerning independence, because, and not only among objectivists but others. In other words, the notion that, well, hey, look, we've got the answer here, so why don't you just why don't you just accept it and be done with it? But the point is, that's faking reality. You can't do that. Independence means you've got to judge for yourself. And again, I assume that you all are coming from a particular perspective. You're going to have to make your own judgments about what I say, and I can't force your mind. You can't force a human mind. Integrity is another virtue. Integrity means you practice what you preach. You don't just give lip service to certain principles or a certain code and then go off and do something else. If you value yourself, if you're a true egoist, if you are rational, if you're productive, if you have pride and honesty and independence, you have to have integrity. You can't just say, I believe in these things. You actually have to walk the walk. Okay, if you're a true egoist. Next is the virtue of justice. Now, what this means is recognizing others, first of all, as human beings like you, who have their own lives, have their own goals, their own aspirations, and to treat them with respect. And we'll come back to this in just a minute. It also means judging others and judging them by some objective standard, because we deal with other people all the time and we have to judge whether people are honest or dishonest, whether people have integrity or whether they're a lot of hot air, right? Whether they think for themselves or not, whether they're being fair to you in a trade, whether all of these kind of things. Justice means giving to others what they deserve, and I don't mean just in terms of exchange and trading, you know, honoring your contracts. I mean in the spiritual sense, where, for example, someone who works hard and who has integrity and all the virtues we talked about, you know, give them show your appreciation. Okay, that's a matter of justice. Anyway, and finally, there's the virtue of benevolence. Now, this is a very interesting one, and this is not found in Ayn Rand. So if someone says, well, Ayn Rand said this. No, Ayn Rand did not say this. David Kelly, in his book Unrugged Individualism, The Selfish Basis of Benevolence, argued as follows. He said, well, it is the case that understanding the world is not enough. We actually have to go out and use the knowledge that we have to help to create the means of our physical survival and well-being. Okay? Rationality means we try to understand stuff. Productiveness means we do something with that knowledge and we go out and create the physical means of our survival. Justice means that we judge of others. This guy is good, bad, honest, dishonest, whatever. But benevolence also is a recognition that it's in our self-interest to create a world of like-minded individuals, and that we can do this by showing respect for others, by perhaps helping others along, even if it's not in our immediate self-interest. I mean, just take an example, a very easy example. You go and you buy something at the store. You buy a newspaper, right? You give the guy the money, the guy or girl, whoever, gives you the newspaper. Well, that's a trade. That's a transaction. The other person has the money. You have the paper. Each of you have fulfilled your contract. We say thank you. Now, why do we say thank you? In a sense, well, it was your obligation to give me the paper. I gave you the money, right? But we say thank you because we're recognizing that the person is not a piece of furniture. It's not a vending machine we're dealing with. We're dealing with a person, an actual human being here, okay? Benevolence means that you try to create a certain kind of society based on the virtues that we were just discussing. And again, I call your attention to David Kelly's book on this. And I think this is an important addition to the philosophy of objectivism. Some objectivists say it shouldn't be a part of it. We happen to think it should. Okay. The final thing I have to say under this kind of essence of ethics is to make the point that life is a matter of choice and a matter of actions, that we have volition and free will. This is absolutely crucial, that all of these virtues that I've just discussed have to be acted upon. You have to choose to think or not to think. You have to choose to be honest or not honest. You have to choose to exercise your mind and be independent. You have to choose to have integrity. These are all choices. These are all habits that you condition into yourself through your actions, but you have to choose and you have to act. And again, we have this series of values and virtues that can be our guide, but life involves choice, life involves action. People are responsible for their own selves, and I'll come to some of the details about that in a minute. Actually, I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. How's that? Okay. The second thing I want to talk about is life of a true egoist, or life of true egoism. Now, what I want to do in this section is I want to talk to each of you now as individuals. I want to talk to you about your own lives. I'm not just talking about abstract theory, though I think you'll find the abstract parts of this discussion interesting, but I want you each to think about what I'm saying as individuals and think about the things I'm saying in terms of your own lives. Now, I'm not advocating a social policy. I'm saying each of you listen to what I say. I think this is very important for you as individuals. And what I'm going to do in this section is also address some of the misunderstandings of true egoism, as well as talk about what a true egoist is like. Okay. First of all, true egoism means taking yourself seriously. It means taking your own life, your own actions, and what you do seriously. Now, seriously doesn't mean dull and boring, okay? Seriously can mean that you so value yourself that you're going to go out and have a good time. Life, I believe, should be and is a celebration. But taking yourself seriously means not treating yourself shabbily. Right? It means wanting the best for you, wanting the highest happiness, the highest fulfillment, the greatest flourishing that you can have. That's what treating yourself seriously means, not treating yourself as trivial and unimportant. This is, again, obviously an application of self-esteem, but I want to make it very personal. It means in your own lives, when you look into your soul, you've got to take yourself seriously. Second, it's very important to understand that, and this is, I'll give you a quote from Ayn Rand, as man is a being of self-made wealth, so he is a being of self-made soul. As man is a being of self-made wealth, so he is a being of self-made soul. The second thing a true egoist should recognize is that they are responsible for creating their own moral character, for creating their own soul, so to speak, in terms of the virtues that I've just discussed above, of adjusting their moral character to meet new challenges, or if they look inside themselves and say, you know, I'm kind of defective in some of these areas, things aren't working out, I'm not quite as happy. Self-made soul means that you work to condition yourself. Now, some people say, well, isn't it true that some people have a better background than others? Some people have better education. Some people grow up in really horrendous situations, inner cities perhaps, or whatnot, and that's true. And a lot of people have very, very bad breaks. But one of the things about being human is we always have the option of stepping back in our minds. Remember that virtue of rationality, of stepping back in our minds and saying, I don't know, is this working? And if your life isn't that satisfactory, if you find it full of contradictions and so forth, you can do something about it. It might be hard. But you can do something about not only changing things like getting a better education and all, but also changing your moral habits. Man is a being of self-made soul. The third thing, or letter C in my outline, of true egoist chooses, you have to choose what you love, choosing what you love. This is important as well. A true egoist is someone who is very self-conscious and introspective in the sense of saying, what do I really love in life? And, of course, asking whether the thing that they love is something that is going to contribute to their survival and their well-being. Perhaps some people like science. Perhaps some people like, working with their hands, repairing things, right? Other people like other things. Other people like a certain kind of mixture. How much is family going to be important in your life compared to career, right? Or friends or whatever. We can choose and have to choose as egoists what we love. And this is not something that's foisted upon us. These are things that we can choose. And it's very important to be conscious of what it is we want most in life, in terms of career, in terms of a partner, a spouse perhaps, in terms of friends, in terms of leisure time. All of these kinds of things are things that we as egoists have to choose. The next thing a true egoist has to understand is the pride of the creator. The pride of the creator. Now remember, I said that we as individuals have to create the means of our own survival and well-being, okay? What it means also is being very attentive to our nature and our role as creators. I like to say whether you are nurturing a child to maturity or a business to profitability, whether you're writing a song or a poem or a business plan or a dissertation, whether you're laying the bricks to a building, or whether you're designing the building, or whether you're arranging for the financing of that building, you as an individual should reflect upon your creative actions. You should reflect upon your creations. You should take pride in your creation. You should take pride in your creations, whatever they are. And by the way, sometimes there's a misunderstanding among some people who read Ayn Rand. They think, well, the creator is only the person who builds skyscrapers or runs railroads or whatever. But as that list I've just given you indicates, no, creation is something that we do with our every action if we're productive people. And we have to recognize that, yes, raising a child is an act of creation, and a wonderful one. Writing a poem, writing a song, these are all acts of creation. In fact, the way I would say it is that business people would do well to start thinking of themselves as creators. After all, we honor artists as great creators. Why not honor business people as great creators who created new industries, new products, less expensive ways of doing things, so you as poor, poverty-stricken students can go to a Walmart or a Target and buy stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to buy. You should be honoring these people, and creators should honor themselves. Okay, a couple of other points about a true egoist, very important points. First of all, true egoists are not whim worshippers. True egoists are not whim worshippers. Now, some people, when they talk about an individualist or an egoist, they say, well, this means essentially do your own thing. You don't have to have any standards. If it feels good, go ahead and do it. Be a complete subjectivist. But that's not the case, because remember, we as human beings have a certain nature. And it dictates, our nature dictates that in order to live a happy, productive, flourishing life, we have to use our rational capacities, we have to be productive, we have to have self-esteem, we have to be honest, we have to have integrity, all of those kinds of things. So if you as an individualist say, well, I'm just going to go off and do whatever I want and indulge in any whim that comes along, and I'm not going to think much about it at all, well, you're going to end up kind of miserable. These are not true individualists who behave in that sort of a way. They're acting against their own nature, and they're going to end up, at the very least, very conflicted as individuals, if not even worse. By the way, there are many paths to personal happiness, and part of life is exploring it and you're going to make mistakes and all, but it's to recognize that there are standards. You do have this tool called reason that allows you to step back and say, well, is this working or not? Am I going down the right path or not? Okay, next, a true egoist does not act at the expense of others. Again, as Rand would say, you neither sacrifice yourself to others, nor do you sacrifice others to yourself. We're not talking about, as some people would argue, a Nietzschean form of egoism. There's nothing really egotistical or egoistic, I should say, in the real sense of the word, of somebody who doesn't take responsibility for supporting themselves through their own thoughts and efforts, and who decides instead, well, hey, I can just go ahead and rob a 7-Eleven. I can create internet scams and steal that way. I can rape, women or men, depending on your preference. I can get my way that way. Isn't that being a true egoist? Isn't that being truly self-interested? And the answer is, well, no, it isn't. You're relying on others, as it were, to create values that you're simply expropriating and stealing. You can't really have pride as the creator if that's what you do. So when you're talking about a true egoist, you're not talking about the sort of conventional understanding of a selfish person as someone who steals and who cheats and does things like that. Well, whether that's the right meaning of the word selfish is an open question, but a true egoist doesn't do those things. Finally, a true egoist is not spiritually reliant on others, And I mean a couple of things about that. First of all, a true egoist, a person with true pride, is not boastful. In other words, I shouldn't get my sense of self-worth by saying to all of you guys, hey, you got to recognize what a brilliant fellow I am, and if you don't, well, I'm going to feel bad about it. A true egoist is not out there bragging. A true egoist looks at themselves and has the knowledge, that they have created themselves in a certain way. They have that quiet pride, not a boastful, loud pride that depends on others standing up and clapping for them. Okay, nor for that matter, when you talk about being spiritually reliant on others, it doesn't mean that your self-esteem comes through at the mercy of the subjective opinion, whims, and stupidity of other people. I know a lot of people who are perfectly decent people, but if some idiot doesn't think highly of them or starts to give them grief and all, they start to doubt themselves. And that's not a true egoist. The true egoist says, well, if somebody misunderstands me, that's unfortunate. If somebody is a loud blowhard and wants to go off half-cocked and call me names, well, that's their problem, not mine. I have enough self-esteem, enough sense of my own self-worth that I'm not reliant on the whims and opinions of others for my self-esteem. So I hope this discussion of true egoism has given you an understanding of what a true egoist should be, and I hope all of you listening to me this evening will be and try to strive to be true egoists. Now, I've given you kind of this is a nice lesson for how you guys should run your own lives, and I hope you'll look into this deeper. There's a lot of good work that's been done in these areas. Ayn Rand has written in gory detail about a lot of this. On the psychological side, Nathaniel Branden, who used to be associated with Rand, has done excellent work that can help people follow these virtues. The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem would probably be a good book by Nathaniel Branden to start with. And there's a lot of work being done in evolutionary psychology that I think bears upon how we can go about disciplining ourselves for maximum happiness and flourishing, you might say. Whole big area, but I'm suggesting that your goal in life should be to be an egoist and to be happy and so forth. Now, you're a member of Students for Liberty, and as the name suggests, you're really interested in liberty and politics and things like that. So let's go to the final section of this discussion. I want to talk about egoism, the egoism and as a foundation, egoist foundations of freedom. What I'm maintaining is that the kind of life choice, you might say, that I've just outlined isn't just a matter of, well, you can go ahead and do this, but others might want to do something else. I'm going to suggest that this form of egoism that I've just discussed is absolutely crucial to a free society. And let me make my case this way. First of all, society, when we talk about society, society is a manifestation of values. It's a manifestation of the values, assumptions, priorities, expectations of the individuals who make up the society. And these are manifestations of the moral characters of the individuals who make up the society. These values are reinforced by our social and our political institutions. So when we talk about a society, what we're talking about is a community of values. We're talking about values, assumptions, priorities, expectations that are shared by a whole bunch of individuals. Now, what that means is that if you have the wrong values, you're going to have the wrong kind of society. I want to go to point number 2 here, what libertarianism can lack. I figured I'd throw something provocative in here, as if this talk hasn't been provocative enough. Libertarians, as a political philosophy, we simply say that we're concerned not with how people live their lives, we're concerned with people having freedom to do as they please. Society allows each individual to pursue their own goals. And you can choose what you want to do. You can choose whether you want to be religious or an atheist or something in between. You can choose what career you want. You can choose who you want to marry, who you want to have sex with, all of these kind of things. They're your own business, right? All the government is there to do is to make sure that individuals don't initiate the use of force against others, okay? And so even if I think your lifestyle is nuts, well, I can say it's nuts, but, I can't do anything about it. I can't pull a gun on you. I can't force you to change your values. Okay, we all agree on that. But I want to make an important point here. Often, what individuals value are things, characteristics, they have virtues and so forth that are anti-freedom. There are some individuals who really get a kick out of exercising power over other people. That's their goal. is to exercise power over other people. You know, they're butt-inskis, they're busybodies. Now, you know, in the past, it might be that these people could natter at you and say, I don't like your tie, I don't like this, I don't like that, and you could kind of take it or leave it, you know, what their opinion is. But these are the kind of people who tend to go into politics, right? And a lot of people have these kind of characteristics and they vote, meaning that if they have rotten values and virtues, well, it's going to be reflected in the political regime. Often people prefer not to think. Some people make a virtue of faith. And so, for example, if you look at a lot of the Islamists, I would argue, and some libertarians would disagree with me, I would argue that the reason why Islamists want to kill many of us is not just because they don't like American foreign policy, though that may be the case as well. It's because they just cannot stand to be in a world where everyone doesn't think and act like them, and you know, and pursue their primitive, frankly disgusting vision of what the world should be. In the same way, Nazis didn't just want the Jews to be more German, or didn't want the Jews just to stop charging interest rates that were certain high, that were very high, or something like that. Those are all myths, incidentally. Anyway, the Germans, or the Nazis, I should say, just didn't like Jews. They had this visceral hate, and they wanted to kill them. Okay. Point is, values make a difference. The content of values make a difference. Values are things that are integrated in us just as they're integrated in society. Now, I'm not saying the state should attempt to control morality. Absolutely not. My God, they can't even do the basic stuff. You know, they can't even protect us, which is their fundamental job. You know, they shouldn't have anything, they shouldn't be doing stuff with morality. But you as individuals who love freedom, you as members of Students for Liberty, should be striving to create a certain kind of society, not just so that people can be free to do and think whatever they want, but understand that the success of this enterprise is going to be dependent on the degree to which people are egoists in the true sense of the word. That is, people take pride in themselves and are productive and rational, and so forth. You know, take an example here. For instance, what if each individual, each creator, loved their lives, loved their work, loved their family, loved their you know, everything that would go under the rubric of creation, the way they loved their children? Well, the example I gave at a talk recently is how would you expect a parent to act if they saw someone trying to molest or bother their child? Well, they'd want to punch their face in. Imagine a society in which each individual had that kind of visceral reaction when the government comes in and says, we're going to micromanage you. We're going to take as much of your money as we can get away with, and we're going to tell you how to spend it, and we're going to tell you what foods to eat, and we're going to tell you whether you can use plastic bags when you go to the grocery store or not. And we're going to imagine if you had a society of true egoists, of true individualists, how they would react to a government that came up and tried to pull that kind of stuff on them, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people have been guilt-tripped into rejecting this egoist morality, and therefore they put up with this garbage. Imagine a society in which people so valued their independence and so valued the challenge of taking responsibility for their lives that they simply wouldn't put up with the government trying to control them. In that kind of a society, in which each person pursues what they love, does it in some kind of a rational way, realizes they're responsible for their action, in that kind of a society of true egoists, we would all be enriched, entertained, educated, enlightened, and inspired by our fellows. That's the kind of society worth preserving. That's the kind of society, an egoist society worth preserving, that we're all working for. So again, to conclude, what I argue is that true egoists are not subjectivists. They're what I've just described, and that this kind of true egoism, which, by the way, was, I believe, in many aspects at the founding of this country, and was the founding ethos of this country, is what we have to get back to if we want to not only live happy lives as individuals, but also to restore and preserve freedom in our country and throughout the world. And I thank you for your attention. I think we have a few minutes for Q&A, right? I assume somebody will.
Yep, that's right.
Oh,
and
there's a what?
there I am. We do have a couple of questions. So if you have another question, just feel free to type it in the question box and I will get to you. But first up, we have Preston. And Preston, I'm going to unmute you so that you can ask the question yourself. Let's see. Go ahead and ask.
All right. Thank you so much for hosting this webinar, and I really appreciate your time.
Hey, Preston.
Thank you. I'm involved in a debate team, and I take a very libertarian approach to the arguments I make. I heard an umbrella argument that I didn't really know how to respond to recently. That it was a speciesism argument that said that I'm sure you're familiar with speciesism, but it says that it asserts that other sentient beings that are non-animals deserve the same equality and rights that humans deserve or are entitled to. How do you go about rationalizing the lack of rationality that a non-human has? Do you see what I'm saying? That's at the core of all your argument.
Absolutely, yeah. This is a very good question, and it comes up a lot, and in terms of either animal rights or things of this sort. I'd say a couple of things. But first of all, understand what an egoist or a person who runs their lives according to rational self-interest does not believe in. We don't believe in inflicting pain and harm just to get our jollies, okay? That's pretty sick. It certainly goes against the notion of valuing life, and we're not just talking about human life, but the notion of getting your jollies from pain. You'd be a pretty sick puppy, and you should probably be seeing a doctor about that. So that's not what we're talking about. However, I say a couple of other things. First of all, in nature, before there were human beings on this planet, go back however many years, let's go back 10, 12, 14, 15 million years, even the primates were pretty primitive at the time. When there were no humans on this planet, okay, animals were killing each other left and right. That's the way nature is. And it happens today in nature. Critters kill themselves left and right. So you might say right out, well, why should we be different from other critters? After all, a lion can go out and kill a thing, whatever they kill. And I've actually been to Africa, and I saw a cheetah run down, two cheetahs run down a wildebeest. Quite interesting. I wasn't out there shooting. I was shooting with my camera and had a great time. But should there be, if wildebeests have rights, first of all, who's going to enforce these rights? Do we have to have a code of values for the cheetah, and the cheetah has to respect the rights of the wildebeest? The point is that it's only human beings who have free will and who are responsible for their actions. A cheetah is not responsible in the sense of he's not going out to kill the thing just out of jollies. He wants some food, okay? The concept of rights only comes in a situation where you have creatures who have free will, who have a rational capacity, who can understand the world around them, who understand that alternatives and choices are possible, and that when they're in society, they go into society with other people in order to benefit from division of labor and all of these other things. But we have to have a rule by which we govern ourselves in society, and we call that individual rights, meaning that I respect your rights and freedom, and you respect mine, and we deal with each other based on mutual consent. Animals are not creatures who have free will. They're not creatures who have a rational capacity. They can't think. They're not responsible for their actions. We don't put cheetahs in jail for killing wildebeests. They don't have rights. Now, then there's a whole other issue about, well, if you're killing a cow, should you kill it humanely and so forth? And I think those are open questions. But no, only humans, only creatures with free will and the rational capacity have rights. That's what the concept of rights is based on. Okay?
All right, thank you. And we have another question from Edgar. So Edgar, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, Professor. Thank you for providing this webinar. I'm not quite sure whether or not I heard a defense of egoism on philosophical grounds. So I'm looking for, are you presumably then defending psychological egoism as opposed to rational or ethical? And if you do defend a version of psychological egoism, can you provide a defense that does not rely upon circular reasoning or unfalsifiable tautologies?
Okay, give me a little bit more on how you understand psychological egoism versus, give me a little bit more on that.
Sure. So we ask, why did you act? Why did that individual act? Well, it was because to fulfill their self-interest, right? And then, of course, we have the problematic cases of the soldier jumping onto a grenade to protect his other soldiers, right? So it seems to have a problem. Psychological egoism seems to have a problem reconciling issues of altruism.
In other words, if you're psychological, in other words, if you're if you're an egoist, what explains, throwing yourself on a hand grenade, or what explains, a mother, doing something to save her kids and she dies, correct?
Right. Well,
okay.
Well, I mean, it goes on and on. It just has this infinite regress. So all men desire satisfaction. Satisfaction of what? Satisfaction of their desires for what? For satisfaction. Satisfaction of what? Their desire.
Okay.
So it just goes on and on and on.
Okay. Okay. These are very good questions, and I'll give you a couple of answers. First of all, when you talk about life as a standard, remember I kept saying life is human qua human, or man qua man, and happiness and flourishing and so forth. It might be, and in fact sometimes is, the case that you do not want life unless it's a certain quality of life. Now the extreme example is if someone has cancer or some terrible disease, they're in constant pain, no medication will eliminate that pain. Their life, there's just no quality. You can't do anything. You can't watch TV. Can't listen to music. It's just absolutely miserable. It's rational in that case to say, I don't want to live anymore. I'd prefer to die, because again, it's not life in just survival. It's life of a certain quality. In that sense, you can understand why somebody might say, I so love my children that I would rather die, literally, trying to save my children, if there's a chance of trying to save them, than to just sit back and say, nah, it's kind of a risk, and I don't want to do it. And I suspect most parents would think that way. As to a second part of your question is a deeper one that I don't know if I can answer in 2 minutes, but I'll give it a shot here, and that is the circular argument thing, that, well, everybody, is trying to satisfy their psychological needs, and what are those needs, and it's kind of the circular thing. What I would argue is that, in fact, because we are hardwired a certain way, certain approaches to life are not going to work, whereas others are going to work. And by the way, there's a lot, and this is one of the things I think objectivism needs to do a lot more thinking about. Not because it contradicts objectivism, but because there's a lot of very good work now in psychology. I call your attention, for example, to Jonathan Haidt's book, The Happiness Hypothesis. There are a lot of other books that have been really looking into how our minds work and how psychology works. But I think ultimately you still have the need to step back and to say, well, is giving into my, is following a certain approach going to work very well, or not? Because remember, one of the things about human beings is we can choose to hurt ourselves. This is something that other animals certainly don't do out of, the way that we do it. People can be self-destructive, not destructive in the sense of I want to put myself out of my misery because I have cancer. People can choose to be self-destructive. That's one of the things about having free choice, and something to be fought against. Anyway, this is just kind of a very general overview, and it's something I'd love to follow up with you at some point, because I've been doing a lot of work in this area. Okay. Another question?
Yep, I have another question, and this is from Allie. She doesn't have a mic, so I'm going to go ahead and ask for her.
Okay. Hi, Allie.
What do you think of public education requiring ethics as a fundamental course along with English, math, history, and science?
Well, I don't think much of public education, or government education, as I should say. So, you know, they don't do a very good job of many of these things. And in fact, in one sense, they're already teaching ethics. They're teaching the wrong ethics. Most, or I don't know if most, but more and more high schools, for example, require community service because in terms of the educational establishment, service to others is the ultimate good. So, frankly, I think very lowly of public government education anyway. Now, let's say in my ideal world we don't have any government schools. Then it might be a little bit of a different matter. And I would like to see ethics taught. If I were running a university or school, and anybody wants me to, I'd be happy to do that. I think those kind of courses would be very good, but not as propaganda courses. Rather as courses to really look deeply into human nature. That's what philosophy used to do when people used to read Aristotle and Plato. I disagree with Plato in most cases. I agree with Aristotle in most cases. But yes, those would be very important courses, but you got to really be careful about the government taking and doing what they would do with those kinds of things and making it a matter of serving others, serving the state, this kind of nonsense, since our government education system is so utterly corrupt and terrible. Okay, I think got room for a few more.
Okay, I have another question from Angela, and she's wondering, where do gay and lesbians fit into egoism?
Just where every other human being fits into egoism. I'm coming from the assumption that gays and lesbians don't wake up one morning and say, okay, let's see, do I want John or Jane? Well, actually, I know a number of bisexuals who do make those kind of choices. But to me, it's something that you're hardwired with, and therefore, the same principles apply. All the same principles about being rational, about being productive, about having self-esteem, honesty, integrity, all of those kinds of things. Go back to that slide real quick. There we go. There's the list. You take a look at that slide of the values and virtues, and I don't see where any of this doesn't apply to a lesbian or gay. The one thing that it would apply to is that instead of being interested in having a deep, loving, personal relationship with someone who's opposite gender, it would be someone of the same gender. Okay? And by the way, I do believe, and I'm a married person, in about 3 months I will hopefully be the father of fraternal twin girls. I'm absolutely excited about it. Family to me is part of being a good egoist. I'm really looking forward to raising a family. But in terms of lesbians or gays, they would be doing these things with someone of the same sex rather than a different sex. And so absolutely everything I said here applies to gays and lesbians, except that you would have different love interests than I would.
Okay, and if you have time, we just have one more
Yep.
question. And
Sure.
I want to apologize to those that we weren't able to get to. I want to let you know I was going in chronological order. I wasn't picking and choosing. But Dr. Hudgins, will they be able to contact you via email if they want to?
Yep. You can email me at EHUDGINS@AtlasSociety, all one word, .org. I also have a Facebook page, by the way, so you can find me on Facebook and see my charming face on Facebook. So you can contact me there as well with the questions. But go ahead. You want to get one more question in?
We'll get one more in. And this is from Alejandro. When it comes to the case of abortion or the right to access for an abortion, many individualists and/or libertarians have taken a pro-life position, believing that a fetus has the right to life in the constitutional context that every individual has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that abortion is inflicting harm on another individual, the fetus. Do you believe in the government or individual states should enforce the right to life by banning the access to abortion, making it a criminal offense, or do you believe that an individual has the right to an abortion in pursuit of their self-interest?
I want to leave that decision to the individual rather than to the state. Now, I will say this. there's a reason why this is a very controversial area, because there's no clear line. When, for example, in the first trimester, you're literally talking, let's say the first couple of weeks, you're literally talking about a clump of cells that are pretty undifferentiated, and it's many times smaller than the brain of a mosquito. Okay, you're not really talking about a human being. Second trimester, you're getting to a different point. Third trimester, you actually have a fetus that that actually has a brain, that can actually hear, that can have sensations and things like that. And of course, right now, the way the laws work is that there can be limits on abortion in the third trimester. Interestingly enough, Ayn Rand, who was very strongly pro-choice, actually did hold out that it might be valid to consider restrictions on abortion in the third trimester. But I'm very reluctant to have the government make those kinds of decisions, because they do such a poor job in every other area. By the way, Ayn Rand did a very good essay on this. Let's see if I can find it real quickly here. Okay, we'll have to email me to find it, because I can't find it real quickly here, but she did I thought, a very good essay on this issue, and I'll call your attention to it if you want to email me. Okay, any other questions?
That's all the time we have tonight, but there definitely were some questions, so I really encourage students to follow up with Dr. Hudgins to ask him your question through email or on his Facebook page, however you'd like. So I just want to say thank you so much to Dr. Hudgins and all of our participants this evening. I really hope you can continue coming back to our webinars and learn more throughout the year. Our next webinar is Monday, October 18th. Dr. Jim Lark is going to be joining us again to discuss substantive criticisms of the libertarian perspective and how those criticisms may be addressed. You can register by visiting our website, studentsforliberty.org. On a final note, shortly you will be emailed a follow-up survey to the webinar. Please take a couple of minutes to fill it out. It really helps us know how to improve our programs and make these webinars more interesting for you. And with that, we are officially wrapped up. Thank you again for your time this evening, and have a wonderful night.
Bye-bye.